I just want walking in stations. Look, I don't want walking in stations because here's the thing. Walking in stations was never a good idea. Here's my hot take. Walking in stations was never a good idea. Okay? On the surface, walking in stations was the idea of like, here's your captain's quarters, and you're going to start with these default ones, but then we're going to give you guys the customization tools to make your own. So that way, like, your null station can have like customized captain's quarters. And that's cool. But the problem is that's, as you could tell, like, it's not enough. There's no gameplay to that, right? So it's got to be something more than that, which is the other half of things, establishments, right? The idea is that you'd be able to own your own bar or gambling hall and like go to this CD place where, you know, this Cedar player run establishment, make backdoor deals. And that was the fantasy. That's what everybody was looking towards. In fact, even the earliest images of ambulation showed like a literal strip club. But the problem with that is, like, let's go back to captain's quarters. When they were coming out with captain's quarters, the idea was that you'd walk around and you'd, like, if you wanted to open up the agents, you'd click on the agent thing. If you wanted to customize your thing, you'd click on the mirror. But the player base was adamant that they didn't want the captain's quarters to cause some sort of, like, penalty. That nothing could be slower in captain's quarters than it was in the old UI. And therefore, CCP had to make the concession of keeping the old station UI there, so that way you could just access all the stuff instantly, which makes the entirety of captain's quarters pointless. It's just a secondary interface, more or less. Now, granted, there's like all of this stuff about connecting to your character and all that stuff, but I mean, like, mechanically speaking, there's no gameplay there at all. So if you extend that into establishments, you don't go to a seedy, smoky back room to do your fucking espionage. You do it on Discord. You do it on TeamSpeak. Right? Like, no one would do that unless there's some mechanical advantage to something. And I guarantee you that if there was a mechanical advantage to something, then people would complain about it. Why would you own an establishment? What does it get you? Well, probably passive income because people buy stuff. Why would anyone go to your establishment to buy stuff? Do you see the problem? Like, CCP in this era was super good, but NPCs, who gives a shit about NPCs? This was all about players going to players' things. It's like player housing with extra steps. But again, there's very little real gameplay or potential for gameplay there. This is a problem that CCP ran into a lot during this time, where they have these great ideas that are great ideas on a high level, but then when you start to break down what it would mean to implement it from a mechanical point of view, it all falls apart. Now, there was gameplay that they were working on that would allow you to leave your ship with a soft clone and be able to go and explore in, like, sleeper conclaves and stuff in order to find stuff. And that was originally what was going to lead into, like, the dust stuff, like the dust trailer where they're walking into the station or whatever. That was like the original concept, one of the original concepts of what they were going to do with ambulation. But when the Summer of Rage happened, all that was scrapped completely. In fact, you could probably even go find the old thread, which was huge in both its popularity and the disappointment when CCP said that they could not follow through with it because all funding was removed. But my point is that that's why I'm excited about the shooter. And that's why I don't want it to be just another tournament shooter. I don't fucking want any, like, we already have the game that talks about capsuleers. We already have that game. We already have that perspective. There's so much more to the EVE universe than just our perspective and the perspective of Immortals. I want the noir detective mystery, video, like, what is it? LA Noir set in Arcturus, I want to like Cyberpunk 2077 set in Kali, right? Like, that's interesting to me. I am the Senate. My alliance uses profits from customs offices and ratings to improve infrastructure, which makes our life in our home funner. Yeah, well, I mean, that makes total sense. Didn't CCP get rid of walking stations due to the quirks as well as... So, again, or not again, but so Captain's Quarters was the first piece of their new tech that they were working on, the Carbon engine, right? This was supposed to be an engine that was going to rival Unreal. And this was the beginning of it. And it didn't work. Like, upon release, it broke some people's machines. The idea of the modularity was never, like, the thing is that they explained and they showed that it was modular from the very beginning. So even if it was all development was kind of axed, why wouldn't you at least release the modularity piece of it, since that was supposedly already bit? I sincerely believe that they bit off way more than they could chew with Carbon, and that almost destroyed the company. But we don't talk about that much. It wasn't dust, it was Carbon. In fact, dust was kind of as, like, one of the things about dust was that dust was originally going to be in the Carbon engine as well. But, yeah. Instead, they went with Unreal. You can go back and watch the old NVIDIA tech demos showing off the Carbon engine with Vampire. My point is that rather than introduce walking in stations in EVE, I would like to see the shooter explore EVE Online from a different perspective. From the very beginning, the idea of Captain's Quarters was odd, because you're a capsuleer that stays in your pod. Like, why would I get out of my pod to go to an establishment where I can get shot in the head? By the way, that wasn't just a wild thing. That was kind of a reference. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.